So this is the sort of an awareness seminar. The purpose is that some of the when in society we have some norms which are sanctioned, and we are not clear whether it falls under corruption or it's a fair practice. So there is a thin line between fair practice and corrupt practice. So this seminar and with the eminent speakers we have today, we would like to understand that in society we should not confuse between this, these two things. So that's why we have focused this seminar on understanding corruption and prevention in society. The focus of the prevention of corruption is a key component of a successful anti-corruption strategy. Since its beginning, Pakistan has been grappling with the crippling corruption. To address this menace, almost all governments have undertaken various approaches. Anti-corruption laws were introduced and anti-corruption institutions were established. A few examples are like the Special Anti-Corruption Establishment in 1947, the Federal Investigative Agency FIA in 1975, the Accountability Bureau 1997, and later on the National Accountability Bureau in 1997. So these are some of the institutions. Almost several initiatives have been undertaken over the past years to root out corruption. But still, we feel that there is scant evidence that such crimes have been curtailed. Instead, the opposite is more likely the case. Pakistan ranked 140th out of 180 countries on the corruption index. And these are the area, basically, when as a researcher we find that many of the practices are not even counted as corrupt practices. Let me just quote you an example. In a store in Bangkok, when I was posted in Bangkok, we bought some stuff from a shop and everything was written on site. We picked our own stuff and we came out of the store. A staff was running behind us and saying that, oh, you left your things here. Actually, that we did not buy. We said, no, what we have bought, we have with us. They said, no, this is part of your package. Since it was in Thai, we didn't know. But this is the practice in people's mind. A small level staff, instead of he retaining the stuff with himself, he returned it. So that kind of a thing, when it is not prevalent in society, then it is actually the sanction in our mind. And that's why corruption is a crime, but it's a mindset. So we have to address these things today. In the panel, we have eminent speakers with us. We have Dr. Bushra, Yasmin. She will be online with us. Dr. Bushra is a professor of economics at Fatima Jinnah University, Rawalpindi, and she has been serving as teacher, but she has done a lot of work on the subject as well. So because of the positive time, I'm not into long introduction, just introducing our speakers, then I will move to the panelists. We have Dr. Syed Kalim, Imam, noted scholar, and he served in several government positions. He has been IG and then finally he retired as a federal secretary. So he has a lot of insights, and he's a philosopher as well, by the way. From philosophy point of view, also we would like to hear from him. Then we have Majid Bashir, sir. He's a lawyer, prominent lawyer, Supreme Court, and he has handled many cases of these kind of things. So he will be giving us a legal perspective on the subject. We have Dr. Najaf Mirza sir. He's now DG of the Awareness and Prevention Division. And here I want to clarify here that he himself will better clarify, but I will just want to share with you that this program is being conducted in collaboration with the Awareness and Prevention Division of the bank. So he has that department. He will state himself how they function. So that will be his time. And then we have Honorable Zahir Shah, Deputy Chairman there. He has a lot of things at his credit as a professional, and he's also an economist. So that's the important thing for us, that he's an economist, he's a researcher. He takes keen interest in research. And when this collaboration part was started, so he was very kind and happy that this division will be working with the SDPI. as a think tank. So this think tank and awareness fusion collaboration would be, inshallah, in future as well, serve its purpose. So we will be hearing from them for some of things. Then we have Dr. Vaqar. He's a SDPI, is a joint executive director. So I would put two roles here for him. One is as a JED, joint executive director SDPI, to welcome all on behalf of the SDPI. And secondly, he himself is a renowned economist, and he has worked a lot on that area. So his second role will be as a speaker as well. So I would start first from Dr. Vaqar, since the welcome remarks and your input on the subject. Then we will move on to Dr. Bushra.
Thank you, Dr. Shafqat. On behalf of SDPI, we welcome our esteemed panelists, our guests over here, our colleagues from the diplomatic board, and I'm sure there's audience listening to us online. I can already see some participants voting in online as well. So thank you to all of them for taking time out. Particularly honored that we are doing the second collaborative initiative with NAB within the past 3 to 4 months. And for this, of course, I would like to thank the leadership at NAB for being this open and, of course, for reaching out to organizations like SDPI and other like-minded organizations. I'm particularly thankful to Zahir who hosted us as well as other members, the delegation from the non-profit organizations recently, and allowed us to present our views to the international community, which visited NAB in the recent past. My special thanks to, of course, Majid, Bashir, Dr. Munir, Dr. Kalim for taking time out, Dr. Bushra, of course. I think I'll be very short here because there's a lot of experience on the panel and there are people far more qualified than me to speak on this subject. But as Dr. Shafqat has said, that just to open broadly with some brief remarks around what SDPI has been doing or what SDPI's research has found out on the subject. When I joined SDPI 11 years back, in fact, my first project was with the outreach team of NAB. And since then, I think we have done 2 or 3 things which signify, which really give importance to the subject that we are talking about. First was the Foreign Investor Perception Survey. And SDPI continues to do this. We do this twice every year. We try to see the perception of those who are investing in Pakistan. Amongst the top 3 things that they mentioned, out of the past decade or so, corruption has remained in the top 3 for 7 years in the past 10 years. So corruption was an element, was a key element that ends up deterring or preventing foreign investment to come to Pakistan, and it has remained in those top 3 reasons in our biannual survey that we conduct. Now, this is of course serious. It's not just about any investor, it's also about countries that we, of course, hold dear, and we say that they are friends of Pakistan. It's not just with non-China, it's also the Chinese investors who have been part of this sample, and they have been very wary, they have been very concerned that somehow or the other, this element of corruption at one level or the other comes back in the investment value chain. The second thing is public procurement. And within the public procurement, there, of course, is a large element of the subject which we are discussing today. And there are various studies led by the Planning Commission, led by provincial planning departments, which inform us how specific percentage of leakage from the public sector development program, PSDP as we call it, or the provincial ADPs, annual development program as we call it, it just gets lost in the system. And I remember Dr. Hafiz Pasha led one of our studies in which he informed that out of every 100 rupee that the government allocates for pro-poor expenditure, 38 rupees doesn't reach the beneficiaries. And this is, of course, a conservative estimation. So you have these data points to actually back the the importance of today's subject. The third aspect was around trading across borders, an indicator which, of course, our development partners, particularly the World Bank, attaches a lot of importance to. It is part of their DLIs, the loans or the grant that we get from the bank. There's a specific element of improvement that we have to show. And trading across border is one such element. Within the trading across borders, it is the exporting community of Pakistan which is trying to reach out to countries abroad. They want to diversify in other countries, but the buyers of Pakistani products come back and tell them that how the cost of importing from Pakistan continues to change. And more than the element of cost of doing business or the energy costs, it's those uncertain costs, including the cost of informal payments or gifts, for example, that continues to weigh. The fourth aspect that we picked up, it was with the British Council, a survey done for startup enterprises in Pakistan. Now, Pakistan has seen literally a startup revolution in the past decade. Forbes magazine calls us, has actually claimed that fastest growth of freelancers was in Pakistan between the years 2016 and 18, which is a very good sign on the back of rising youth engagement, urbanized, more literate, more connected youth that Pakistan is presenting. However, now that we have data of these startup enterprises, we have gone back to them. And one of the key things that those startups who are wishing to scale up, what they are informing us that between the startup and the scale-up stage, it's the element of corruption that in the end forces them to sell off their successful venture. So if you look at the SECP's own data, a large number of startups get sold away, successful startups get sold away to larger enterprises because the younger lot finds it difficult to navigate through the market. So that's probably the other element. The last point that probably I could make is with regards to the international conventions. And I was just discussing with Chairman Saab as well a while back that our institute is involved quite a bit with helping the government in achieving the conditions around GSP Plus. And next year's GSP Plus is not just a renewal, it is a reapplication, which involves a large part of technical but also political preparation that Pakistan has to do. Therein, again, this subject will come up, and of course, the country has to give a very strong, favorable narrative on how it aims, how it proposes, how it plans to fight corruption going forward. So, with this very brief intervention, Dr. Shafqat, it's back to you, and I look forward to the intervention from our esteemed.
Thank you, Dr. Vaqar, for elaborating the studies which we have done and others have done. And that relates to the academia's work. And I see that Dr. Bushra is here with us online. Can you request you, Dr. Bushra, to give your perspective as an economist, how do you feel? Over to you, Dr. Bushra.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you, Dr. Vaqar, Dr. Syed. I would like to focus here from the academic lens on corruption, and I will shed light on some micro and macro aspect, and will provide some support from the empirical findings of few of my published articles. And then I can say what we can do as academic sense. So let me share my slide. I hope my slides are visible. So if when we look at the corruption, everyone knows how we define it. It generally defined as dishonest. I hope I am audible, because I am not getting the response that I am audible or not. Dr. Syed?
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah, thank you so much. So generally, we define it, the corruption as dishonest or fraudulent conduct by those in power, typically involving bribery. But actually, we know that this is not limited to the bribery. It includes lobbying, extortion, cronyism, nepotism, and actually the list goes on. And in literature, there are various perspectives that how we can define this concept of corruption. One strand of the research provides that it's actually the exchange of mutual benefits and reward that voluntarily take place by mutual agreement. Then another strand provides that this is the violation of norms, in immoral behavior, which include deviation from legal norms and moral values. Then it also about abuse of power in which actor utilize the authority and their position for personal gain and interest of especially the pressure group. So actually, corrupt actors form an intimate, close, or and hidden community in which they secretly agree on the illegal aims and advantage of their ex relationship. This is what the literature provides us, and we experience it as well. And looking at the figures in Pakistan, the corruption, we know now we stand at 140th out of 180 countries on the corruption perception index as provided by the Transparency International. And it's a score of 28, where lower score actually indicate the high corruption, and the high score indicate the very clean country actually. And in 2021, we slid 16 points as compared to the figure in 2020, where we were standing at 124 and with a score of 31. There may be over or underestimation, but still this is an alarming number and alarming situation if we look from the context of Pakistan, and we compare it from the earlier years or with the other countries. India's corruption score stood at 40, while Bangladesh corruption perception index stand at 26, and these two countries are ranked at 85. So India is doing much better than us, while Bangladesh is at 147 in according to Transparency International of 2021. The same Transparency International provided the major two factors behind this massive corruption in Pakistan: the absence of rule of law, and the second, state capture, the influence of private interest groups on public decision making. Actually, so these are being regarded the major reasons for the corruption in Pakistan. Looking at the macro perspective, and the major some of the findings of my own research and some other from the literature, what are the implications of the corruption? This actually decrease the productive capacity of the system from the economic point of view. If we look at it, why? Because by reducing direct income, because corruption promote tactic coordination between clients and tax officials. Corrupt bureaucratic system make it hard for government to generate tax revenues, and we are left with very limited fiscal space. That's the major reason why we are not able to do good with the economic growth. And in this way, corruption promote poverty and income inequality due to poor economic growth, due to biasness in resource allocation, tax rebate to influential group of people, limiting social spending, and uneven approach to education and inefficient allocation, especially for the social protection programs. And the corruption directly and indirectly involved in every sphere of life. And above all, terrorist groups also get financing through the activities, so these corrupt activities. So corruption tends to fuel terrorism, which further hampers government ability to control extremism and violence. Here I would like to refer one of my published research that is conducted for the developing countries, and this provides the reinforcing effect of terrorism and corruption in the selected developing countries. And actually, the focus of the study is on the net out migration, that terrorism and corruption both reinforce each other in increasing the net out migration from the developing countries. So what we have to do, we have to unveil the internal and external hidden sources which facilitate the formation of terrorist organization and finance their activities. And corruption has a big hand in all these evils when we look at from the macroeconomic point of view. Secondly, according to another study of mine, when I try to relate it with the public debt accumulation, so there is a positively significant relationship between the corruption and public debt accumulation in Asian and African countries, with a high intensity in African as compared to Asian, but still there is a significant relationship between the two. And here comes the role of institutional quality. When we incorporate that role, that plays a mitigation role in the corruption debt relationship. So for that matter, we need to have strong judicial system around the anti-corruption strategy, and we would like to hear from the lawyer sitting here from that perspective, because the strong institutional quality has also an important role in lowering the debt burden through effective control of corruption in the developing countries. And for one study in Pakistan, that focus is on the using fiscal decentralization as corruption control strategies. Again, the finding provide in Pakistan that there exists a non-linear relationship between fiscal decentralization and corruption, and decentralization leads to worsen the transparencies at initial stage and then improve at later stage. The result also provide that we can't make use of revenue and expenditure decentralization as stand-alone strategies. We need to focus on the composite decentralization, that actually the combined index of both the revenue and expenditure autonomy on the local and sub-local level. And a benchmark of 44% of composite decentralization is the result of marginal effect coming about out from the result, that if we want to effectively utilize the fiscal decentralization in order to control the corruption, so it can be proved a good measure. So actually, what we need to do, we need to make the process of decentralization more compatible with overall institutional structure of our country. These were few findings from the research that provide the macroeconomic perspective. Now I will move to the corruption from the academia point of view, what's going on and what we need to do. The major problem we are facing in academia is the choice between quantity and quality. Now, it has always been the problem, but in these years, this has been intensified. Why? Because now there is a rat race for publication, for promotion, for the influential positions, and what actually we are doing, we are paying unduly for getting published. Again, compromise quality over quantity. Then we are collaborating unduly for getting published. There is the culture of favoritism and nepotism. A lot of ethical concerns are there when we collect the data, especially from the individuals or from the household, and how we make use of them. Actually, the misuse of power is working behind all these ethical concerns. And here comes the role of leadership. I gone through an article, beautifully written article, and they regarded the leader, and it's true as well, that the leader is a change agent for ethical behavior in the organization. Either this is the academic organization or it's the industry. Effective leader does not tolerate corruption or a corrupt environment. They instill a culture of integrity and ethical conduct among their subordinates. They cultivate a work environment that is conducive to ethical conduct, and they instill a sense of honesty and transparency. They make integrity a value-driven work environment, and such environment, if generated, are less prone to corruption. And let me say that it's not only about declaration of non-discriminatory policies, ethical policy, anti-plagiarism policies. A lot of policies are there, but the point is of their implementation. And the one policy that's lacking is the proper whistleblowing policy. We need to have that policy in order to control this corruption in our academia. When we invest in, and there are some other suggestions that we need to invest. Actually, the leader can do this. They can invest in anti-corruption intelligence knowledge and decision makers of the organization. They should conduct annual cutting-edge and learning programs for students, faculty, staff, and their subordinates, because it's a leader who has to set the tone of an organization. Responsibility of the leader to provide a sustainable system and a corruption-free environment. So finally, what we can do at different, because I have limited time, so I like to provide here that there may be many measures come in everyone's mind from the supply and demand side at personal, community, institutional, and national level. So at personal level, obviously we have to start from home, because the सी का अमल हमेशा अपनी जात से ही शुरू किया जाता है. So we need to be a role model as mother, as father, as elder sibling, whatever we can play a role of role model. We have to inculcate basic moral values in our children. We need to educate our children to differentiate between right and wrong. We need to leave the myth of gray. We need to call a spade, and we should be able to differentiate between black and white, and we need to get our children learn that they should also be able to get the black separated from white. And maybe simple example, we shouldn't bring office stationery to home. We shouldn't use official vehicle, staff, and fuel for families. We shouldn't accept gifts in official capacity. And these are the tiny steps, but these are actually the binding forces. These are the major steps we can easily take, and that actually impart on our children that about how they have to live in the society, and how they have to create a corruption-free environment actually, and a society as well. And the last but not least, we should, and on a personal level, we can try to be in the top 10, because in top 10 there is more of the competition on the basis of favoritism and my personal level. I will like to their suggestion that we know who is the highest tax in our community. We should do, and we are inaugurated of those whom we are mostly inclined to call for inaugural ceremonies. And we need to offer a tax rebate. This is for the government, a tax rebate to the highest taxpayers. Why? Because if we can't penalize so, but we are not able to do so, so at least give some reward to law-abiding persons. At institutional level, we need to educate public by the awareness program SDPI in that direction. Salaries should be raised at par with the market rate and inflation to avoid to move toward the corruption. And we need to be a role model. There should be effective leadership. There should be some collectiveness, and we need to leave the concept of our personal gain behind in order to get and develop this sense of collectiveness. And finally, at national level, we need to think globally, act locally, promote transparency and access to information. There should be strict liabilities to the persons who are involved in tax evasion and tax avoidance. We need to have good governance, legal reform, transparency. There's a long list, and actually this is a long journey to go, but every tiny step matters. Either we take up it at personal level, at community, institutional, or at national level. It's a long way to go, and I hope and I will like to appreciate SDPI for arranging these type of these seminars. Everything we already know, but the sensitization and constant awareness actually required that is well done by the SDPI. So I will like to end here by this word. That कुछ नहीं होगा अंधेरों को बुरा कहने से, अपने हिस्से का दिया खुद ही जलाना होगा. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Bushra, for a powerful message. कि हमने अपना दिया है, खुद से कुछ जलाना है. Actually, the corruption mindset prevails not only in terms of people get money or pay money, but you know, perception or the conception of corruption, it also embeds when, as Dr. Bushra also said, when there is absence of law. If you go to the Wafaqi Muhtasib, I have been associated with some research with them. I have seen 80% of the applications are there from the government's retired officers. Either they are not paid their pension, or there is some other discrepancies are there. When there is a law, that you served at the age of 60, you have to retire, and you get all of the benefit which is embedded in law. But the practice of law is not there. That's a mindset. That is also counted in terms of corruption. Because, then the whole Pandora box opens up to these kind of things. So there are a lot of things which are involved in that. So on the absence of implementation of law, we have a lawyer with us, Majid Bashir. Can I request you to give your perspective on the legal side when there is an absence of law, how corruption really matters?
Thank you very much, Dr. Shafqat. I would like to share a few things with you because Deputy Chairman NAB is sitting here, and he will definitely inform you about the new amendments in NAB ordinance and what is going on in the courts. But being a lawyer and a former judge, I would like to share a few things, which is some kind of a proposal, which is some kind of reservation, that laws are there, and we are very keen, we are very smart. Whenever we have an international pressure through a compliance of international conventions and treaty, we, within a moment, we add all the things and we come up with a nice legislation. But the real problem is the enforcement mechanism in Pakistan. You would be surprised to know that most of the cases pending in NABs finally go in acquittal at the time of the Supreme Court of Pakistan, because after this you have to go to Supreme Court. I have few things in my mind. This is a very, very important thing that the NAB, apart from all these things, doing, giving best, but you have to understand that these are technical cases. You have a two sort of approach in NAB. One is public sector, one is private sector. Public sector is the government officer, procurement rules, violation of that, and etc., violation of procedural things. There's another is a private sector. Very technical people, you have involved, the things are involved through banking, money laundering, and that's why you have every year threat of a grey list, because you don't have a system. And that is because of the corruptions. And remember, FATF, World Bank, IMF, that is the mandate of all these institutions. If you have a corrupt society, if you can't stop corruption, they are reluctant to give you loans. That's why you face all these things. So NAB is the only institution in Pakistan who is working jointly with judiciary. Although they don't have any connection with the judiciary per se, you just simply refer the matter to the judge. But remember, all these cases are technical. You have engaged a judge who is not aware of all these facts. How I have to handle the banking transaction, or I have to handle the money laundering issues. So I think my proposal is that if you want to prevent all these things, laws are there, you need to have a technical people along with the judge. I think this is a very embarrassing proposal from my side, that if you will send a letter to the Chief Justice of Pakistan, that instead of a judge in the NAB court from your judiciary, we need a technical expert, we need an accountant along with you, like in CCP, like in anti-dumping tribunals, you have 2-3 members. So I think technical cases, financial transaction involved cases, they are unattended by the court, first. Second, the prosecution side. Prosecution means the representative of the NAB who will conduct the cases before the judge. They are very low paid. And the cases are very highly involved financial transactions. You need to hire a top-class lawyer if you want to dig out, if you want to resolve it. Third, which is very important, and that is the training of the prosecutor. That is the training of the judges. They are not aware of the technicalities of the financial issues, because you are going to recover the things from the country. It's a financial, basically it's a financial issue. So I think the trainings is definitely lacking, and NAB should think on that they should train the prosecutors through a very, very high institutions so they can properly conduct the cases in the court. And the last and not the least, I think when the case is filed, sir, with due respect, because I'm part of the legal fraternity, NAB is not interested to get out of it. Because the prosecution side should be very, very keen and very smart. Because if you have filed a case, you are going to recover a certain amount from that. You will see, you will go with me, you see in the court, adjournment, no productive work. So if the money is linger on, if it's pending, so you cannot give benefit to the country, to the exchequers. The GDP is going out. Because this is a human right issue, by the way. Prevention of corruption is a human right issue. The money which is coming to me, being a citizen, should go to my project, should go to my health, should go to my education. That is not there. So I think the main issue is that if you want to prevent corruption, you have to quickly decide the cases. And by the way, this is not a murder case. You are very sensitive of that. It's a technical case. You should provide logistics. You should provide legal assistance to the court. And train your prosecutor to go along with the judge. Being a former judge, I can't say that the judges are very much interested to linger on the cases because they are, by default, they have to decide the case. It's the prosecution side. You have heard the stories, the father filed the case and, the son like that. This is because of the procedural lapse. If NAB is such a sophisticated institution, I think this kind of a complaint should not come from NAB. Yes, a general prosecution side, like an ordinary district court situation, is different. But if it's a NAB should be very keen, and cases should be decided within a time limit so that you can get the money, and the money can be used for the government or for the people or for the public for their benefit. Thank you.
Thank you, Majid sir, for putting up several proposals. But here, let me give one disclaimer or, clarification, whatever you want. Here, now I will come to Dr. Majid sir, who will clear it more. There are three sections basically in that. One is prosecution, the other is investigation, and other. The third one is awareness and prevention. So today the topic is awareness and prevention. Now your suggestions are very valid, and Deputy Chairman are here and he has noted it down. But for audience and for us, those who are listening us online, here is the issue, how we can make people aware and warn against practices, as you also mentioned in your talk as well, that how we need to educate people, we need to train people. That's very valid point. Thank you, Majid sir. Najib sir, here I would like your intervention, especially we would like to know about your own division, awareness and prevention, and overall, what is your key message to the people? Because people here are listening, a lot of people are online listening, and the media, through media, it will go as a message. So I want that you should chip in that, and then we will move on.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. SDPI का मौजूद मेहमान जो टेक्निकल चीज़ें माजिद बशीर साहब ने कही हैं उनका जवाब मैं समझता हूँ कि डिप्टी चेयरमैन साहब बड़ा लंबा अरसा लैब में गुजारा है, माशाल्लाह बहुत ही कॉम्पिटेंट है। टेक्निकल इश्यूज को वो देख सकेंगे। मैं जो आपको बुनियादी चीज़ अवेयरनेस और प्रिवेंशन के हवाले से उस बारे में बताऊँगा। उससे पहले मैं बता दूँ कि मैं नैब में 2 दफ़ा रह चुका हूँ। मैं पुलिस ऑफिसर, मैं बेसिकली belong to Police Service Pakistan. I have served twice in lab. Once I was posted as Additional Director of Investigation in 2002, and now I have been serving in this organization since 2019. I have recently posted as DG ANP, and before that I was DG NAB Karachi for 2.5 years. तो ये जो जिस तरह आपने भी कहा कि नैब बुनियादी तौर पे 3 चीज़ों पे नैब ऑर्डिनेंस बेस करता है, और एक तो अवेयरनेस है, और एक प्रिवेंशन है, और एक इन्फोर्समेंट है। अवेयरनेस और प्रिवेंशन जो है उसको हमारा नैब ऑर्डिनेंस का 33C जो सेक्शन है वो कवर करता है, जिसके तहत हम अवेयरनेस के मद में और जिम्मे में मुख्तलिफ एक्टिविटीज़ पूरे साल करते हैं। मसलन सेमिनार्स मुख्तलिफ पब्लिक सेक्टर बॉडीज़ में, अथॉरिटीज़ में, कॉर्पोरेशंस में, और इसके अलावा लेक्चर्स वगैरह स्कूल्स में, एजुकेशन इंस्टीट्यूशन में भी पूरा साल ये एक्टिविटी होती रहती है। और फिर ये कंक्लूड होती है पूरे साल के एंड में एंटी करप्शन डे जो 9 दिसंबर को मनाया जाता है, उस दिन ये सारी चीज़ें जाकर कंक्लूड होती हैं। तो ये पूरा साल की एक एक्टिविटी है जिसमें हम बुनियादी तौर पे अवेयरनेस, सर ने आप बताया कि सेमिनार्स और कैरेक्टर बिल्डिंग सोसाइटीज और डिस्कशंस और लेक्चर्स, ये सारी चीज़ें उसके तहत करते हैं तमाम इदारों में जहाँ जहाँ में हम जा सकते हैं। और इसके अलावा प्रिवेंशन के हवाले से हम चेयरमैन के अप्रूवल के साथ प्रिवेंशन कमेटीज बनाते हैं। वो प्रिवेंशन कमेटीज इसी 33 से ऑर्डिनेंस सेक्शन ऑफ नैब ऑर्डिनेंस के तहत बनती हैं, जिसमें हम चेयरमैन के अप्रूवल से जो ऐसे डिपार्टमेंट्स हैं जिनमें करप्शन की वजह जो है उनके अपने जो रूल्स और रेगुलेशंस के सुकम है, उनको हम देखते हैं कि इसमें क्या सुकम है, और उस बेस पे हम एक प्रिवेंशन कमेटी नोटिफाई करते हैं जिसमें तमाम स्टेक होल्डर्स को लिया जाता है, जिसका चेयरमैन साहब अप्रूवल देते हैं, और फिर प्रिवेंशन कमेटी नोटिफाई होती है और उसके मुख्तलिफ सेशंस होते हैं, और फाइनली वो प्रिवेंशन कमेटी की रिकमेंडेशंस आती हैं उन रूल्स को और रेगुलेशंस को की में अमेंडमेंट्स के हवाले से, और वो फिर फाइनली वो रिकमेंडेशंस चेयरमैन के अप्रूवल के साथ चीफ एग्जीक्यूटिव ऑफ द प्रोविंस को या गवर्नमेंट की इदारों को रेफर होती हैं कि आप ये जो रिकमेंडेशंस हैं इनको इम्प्लीमेंट करें। और उसमें नैब के ये भी अख्तियार आते हैं कि उसको हम मॉनिटर करते हैं, उसको सुपरवाइज करते हैं उन चीज़ों को, और जब वो चीज़ें हो जाती हैं तो ऐसी जो प्रिवेंशन कमिटीज हैं उनको लेटर ऑन डीनोटिफाई कर दिया जाता है। इस तरह पूरे नैब जो अब तक से कायम हुई है 99 से अब तक, तो करीबन कोई 13 हम प्रिवेंशन कमिटीज डीनोटिफाई कर चुके हैं, और 77 इन टोटल प्रिवेंशन कमिटीज बनी है, जिसमें से 28 अभी प्रोसेस में, बाकी रिमेनिंग ने अपने इजलास और अपने रिकमेंडेशंस मुकम्मल कर लिए हैं, और वो चेयरमैन के अप्रूवल के बाद फिर वो सारे डिपार्टमेंट्स में और सारी एग्जीक्यूटिव अथॉरिटीज को भेज दी जाती हैं, और वो फिर उनको इम्प्लीमेंट करती हैं, और नैब उनको को मॉनिटर करता है। तो ये बस बुनियादी जो चीज़ है जो अवेयरनेस एंड प्रिवेंशन के हवाले से, वो तो यही है जो हम करते हैं। उसमें ये ज़रूर है, जिस तरह के आपका आज का सब्जेक्ट है, उसमें मैं एज अ ब्यूरोक्रेट, ज़ाहिर मैं दोनों तरफ मैंने काम किया, नैब में भी काम किया, और मैं इत्तेफाक से डायरेक्टर FIA सिंध भी रहा 2013-14 में, और फिर एडिशनल DG FIA साउथ बलूचिस्तान और सिंध को मैंने देखा है। तो ये बिल्कुल सही कहा गया है, जिस तरह के बड़ा तफसीली ब्रीफिंग्स दी गई कि हमारा 140 नंबर SDPI जो करप्शन परसेप्शन इंडेक्स है, और 180 कंट्रीज में हम 140 पे हैं। ये बहुत ज़रूरी है देखना कि इतने इदारों के होते हुए, यानी एक एंटी करप्शन एस्टेब्लिशमेंट्स हैं जो हर प्रोविंस में है, जो कि 1948 के प्रिवेंशन ऑफ करप्शन एक्ट के तहत बनाई गई। इसी तरह स्पेशल पुलिस एस्टेब्लिशमेंट बनी जो ब्रिटिश के दौर में बनाई गई, जो परचेजेस हुई थी वर्ल्ड वॉर 2 के बाद, उनको इन्वेस्टिगेट करने के लिए एक स्पेशल पुलिस एस्टेब्लिशमेंट बनी। 74 में उसको कन्वर्ट किया गया FIA के एक्ट में। तो ये सारे जो इदारे बने हैं, और इसी तरह से नैब जब उनको वो देखा गया कि 99 में नैब को कायम किया गया कि चूंकि एंटी करप्शन और ज़ाहिर है FIA शायद वो रिजल्ट्स नहीं दे सक रहे थे यानी इन्फोर्समेंट के हवाले से, इवन जो है वो यानी हमारा परसेप्शन जो था वो किसी सूरत दुनिया में तब्दील नहीं हो रहा था। ज़ाहिर एक ऐसा इदारा बनाया गया कि वो ज़्यादा पावरफुल हो, ज़्यादा इफेक्टिव हो, और उसको ज़्यादा फोर्सफुल तरीके से उसको मजबूत किया जाए। और वो सारा, अगर आप प्रीएम्बल देखेंगे नैब का, तो वो सारा जो था वो रिकवरी बेस्ड है, यानी जो नैब ऑर्डिनेंस है। तो ये सारी कोशिशें ज़ाहिर है कि जारी और सारी हैं, लेकिन इसके बावजूद भी अगर आप अभी कलीम इमाम साहब बड़े बड़े सीनियर पुलिस अफसर हैं जो अब रिटायर हुए हैं, और माशाल्लाह इन्होंने सिंध में भी बड़े IG रहे और पंजाब में भी IG रहे और काफ़ी जगह उन्होंने काम किया। तो अभी हम डिस्कस कर रहे थे कि हमारा जो है इन तमाम एफर्ट्स के बावजूद भी अगर आप देखेंगे तो हमारा जो इंटरनेशनल CPI पे हमारा जो लेवल है, या जो हम अपनी सोसाइटी में देखते हैं कि हम इसको कितना बेटर या कितना इन्फोर्स कर सकें करप्शन को रोकने के हवाले से, तो हमें कोई बहुत ज़्यादा अच्छे रिजल्ट नहीं मिले। यकीनन नैब की वजह से ये तो जब बहुत फ़र्क आया कि मैं FIA भी, मैंने आपसे कहा मैंने FIA भी सर्व किया है, पुलिस में भी सर्व किया है, वो भी इन्वेस्टिगेशन करती है लेकिन ब्लू कॉलर क्राइम की, और इसी तरह एंटी करप्शन में मैंने सर्व किया है। तो इन इदारों में अगर आप देखें, उससे अगर आप कंपेयर करेंगे तो ये इदारा यकीनन इसके बड़े असरात थे, इसका बहुत डेटरेंस है, इसका बड़ा इफेक्टिव है। इसमें ये चीज़ें यकीनन जिस तरह माजिद साहब ने पॉइंट आउट किए हैं, और जिनको डिप्टी चेयरमैन साहब मजीद बयान करेंगे, उनमें करेक्शंस की ज़रूरत है यकीनन। लेकिन मेरा ख्याल है कि ये सिलसिला भी ज़रूर प्रिवेंशन और अवेयरनेस जारी रहना चाहिए, लेकिन इसके साथ साथ मैं समझता हूँ बड़ी सख्त ज़रूरत है कि हम इन्फोर्समेंट का जो एंगल है उसको भी मजीद फोकस करके उसको मजीद बेहतर करें। बहुत शुक्रिया।
Shukriya, Dr. Najib Shah. I think very clearly said about the prevention and awareness. And that's why perception index is not changing. Because at society level, our mindset is not changed. And if a down level mindset is not changed, upper level is a different approach. So that's why together we could not perform. So that you have given a right recipe. And now I will move to Dr. Kalim Imam Sahab. Dr. Sahab, what I want to listen from you is based on your experience and your own knowledge of psychology and philosophy. What is that mindset and how it emerged? How we can change this mindset? That's my particular question, other than your own experience. Over to you.
So thank you very much. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Zahir Shah and my colleagues and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. सबसे पहले तो मैं समझता हूँ कि the best way to get rid of corruption is to have an anti-corruption unit. Beside corruption unit, we should have an anti-corruption unit if we really want to get rid of corruption. That is my first remark. My second remark is that I'm so proud that a police officer with a high professional integrity, and I know him personally, Mr. Aftab Sultan, is now heading NAB. I remember General Amjad, and I know Dr. Aftab Sultan. And one thing I can vouch for you, you will see a big difference in what the anti-corruption department has started doing. This I can vouch, and I know Najaf and I know Zahir Shah. They are those people who have that pinch of sorrow and a heart, and they believe that this menace should be reduced, curbed, and actually be stopped. Well, when I joined civil services, one of my friends became very corrupt, and he started taking a lot of money. And I said, "Ya, tum pakde jaoge." तो उसने कहा ये पैसा ही मुझे बचाएगा. So that's how they started. एक तो मैं आपकी आंखों में चमक नहीं देख रहा, आपने नैब बिठा दी, पुलिस बिठा दी, मैं रिटायर्ड अफसर हूँ, मुझसे ना डरे आप. तो आपकी आंखों में चमक नहीं है, आपकी आंखों में वो वाइब्स नजर नहीं आ रही.
हमारी आंखों में चमक क्या है?
आपकी आंखों में चमक इसलिए आनी चाहिए ताकि आप करप्शन रोके.
Prevention from society.
I have the floor. You can answer. Allow me to say a few things, sir. Thank you very much. तो चमक होनी चाहिए, आंखें नजर तो है ना आपके. दोपहर में बैठे इतने अच्छे स्पीकर्स आए, माजिद साहब आए, नजफ आए, Zahir Shah साहब आए. So let's hear, you have heard them. So I believe
is that we should look back, introspect, and project. I think there are certain things we need to want.
We start with humans. कि हम खुद क्या है पहले. We have to introspect ourselves. कि how honest we are, how much integrity we have. We are all the time wanting some reforms to come in a distance. दूर कहीं दराज तब्दीली आ रही हो, सलाब भी कहीं दूर आ रहा हो, सारी चीजें कहीं दूर आ रही हैं, और हम बैठ के उसको देखते रहें. When it comes on to us, that we begin to realize that it's time to reforms. But we need to introspect and talk to ourselves as humans, who we are. We are existentialists. We are habitual beings. We live by our habit. We are told to be that we are rational beings and we are social beings, which we might be to a great extent. But actually, we are existentialists. Self-perpetuation is our hallmark. Everything precedes our existence precedes everything, and we want everything which favors us. Now it has all moved from the human to a family, to a society, to a stakeholders and people that you interact with. The values which will exist in society, the values which exist in humans are going to be transformed and are going to be part of a person who is actually going to be a stakeholder or do something in life. If you have an honest society, you will have an honest stakeholders. But to expect that there's something wrong with the society, and then you expect that those wrong persons will actually come and reforms, we need to think on that. So we need to be very careful. I just wrote a recent article in which I said Kalim and Tarbiyat. So we need to understand, on one hand, you have an education, but at the same time, you need to have an awareness and that moral sense to understand the मेरी जिम्मेदारी है. उन जिम्मेदारी को कैसे निभाऊं? लेकिन जो अच्छे लोग होते हैं उनके ऊपर जब उनको ओहदा मिलता है, नजब हैं, जाहिर शाह साहब हैं या आफ्ताब सुल्तान साहब हैं, वो परेशान हो जाते हैं, कहते हैं हमारी आजमाइश आ गई। लेकिन बहुत से लोग बहुत खुश होते हैं कि अब मौजें होंगी, लेकिन जो अच्छे लोग हैं वो समझते हैं ये आजमाइश है उनकी, और अब उनको जवाब देना पड़ेगा और अब उनको चीज़ें ठीक करनी पड़ेगी, और वो करते हैं, बहुत हद तक करते हैं और किसी हद तक कामयाब भी होते हैं उसमें। सो with that, I would move on and say how actually we can overcome it. मैं लेकिन बताऊं कि जो environment exist कर रहा है उसको आप थोड़ा सा समझने की कोशिश करें. The environment which I'm representing an organization which has been written over here that we are #1 corrupt organization in Pakistan, and this is ranked as an organization which tops in this category. So I have come to explain certain things. If you go to any constable house in Pakistan, you will see how he lives. He's a very poor man. He hardly needs his bread, but the money is going somewhere else. The 90% of the police force is not corrupt. They live from hand to mouth. They don't want to do it. Many of them may be doing it for the need, basically. You may see a constable on a traffic job taking 50 or 100 rupees, and he looks very bad, and we curse and we condemn him. But we forget people who take millions and billions and get away with it. So coming back to our topic, what I believe is simple answers to, before I take question and answers, we have so many authorities to curb this corruption. हम एक के बाद एक इरादा बनाते चलते हैं. हम जब पुलिस में आए ना, हमारा SHO गश्त करने जाता था, फिर हम एक DSP निकालते थे चेक करने के लिए कि SHO गश्त कर रहा है कि नहीं कर रहा. फिर SP साहब निकलते थे कि DSP साहब गश्त कर रहे हैं कि नहीं कर रहे हैं. फिर SSP साहब निकलते थे कि SP साहब गश्त कर रहे हैं कि नहीं कर रहे हैं. IGP निकल आता था कि गश्त हो रहा है कि नहीं. इस्लामाबाद में एक मिनिस्टर साहब आए, वो भी गश्त करना शुरू हो, उनके पास भी वॉकी टॉकी होता, तो सब गश्त कर रहे होते थे, नजर कोई नहीं आ रहा. So we have NAB, we have internal affairs, we have FIA, we have anti-corruption, and I'm suggesting anti-corruption, and we have ombudsman. We have all these organizations, but where are we ranked? Where are we ranked? That's the question which Majid and others have raised. Few recommendations. The problem is with the leadership. The problem is with the person, managers at various tiers. They are actually the problems. Their capacity, their capability, and they are becoming of non-political. They become political. All these organizations need to be political. किसी ने ऊपर से नहीं कहना इस्लामाबाद पुलिस को कि आप पर्चा करें और दहशतगर्दी के पर्चे लगाएं. चाहे इस दौर में थे या पिछले दौर में थे, ये नहीं हो सकते. वो ये कह सकते हैं ये वाकया हुआ है, आप इंक्वायरी करें. इंक्वायरी करने के बाद पुलिस will decide whether it constitutes an offense or not, and then sanctions are applied. So the police leadership has to stand. The other leadership of various organizations have to stand. The corruption units organization have to stand. We are not going to register this case. We are not going to arrest people. We are going to, if you are in London or if you are in America, if a cop comes to your house, the hell is loose because he's coming to your house with evidence. It's not a story that you go to someone's house and you are trying to extract evidence. Now, pakad lo pehle, baad mein puchenge isne chori ki hai. So we need to come out of this concept. हम पुलिस में क्या करते हैं? हम सीन ऑफ क्राइम पे जाते हैं और अच्छी पुलिस दुनिया की क्या करती है? सीन ऑफ क्राइम पे जाएगी, वहां से ढूंढेगी चोर किसके संपर्क में. हम क्या करते हैं? हम चोर को ढूंढ लेंगे और फिर से कहेंगे बताओ तुमने वारदात कैसे की. So we have to come out of this practice, and leadership matters the most. The fish rods from the head. The police organization or any organization, if it's bad, it's not because of a constable. It's bad because of its leadership. The leadership capacity has to be. I also hold myself responsible for me, Najab, Zahir, Shah, is some of those people who are trying to flow against the current, and we succeed at times. And these leadership and tiers has to be held accountable. They have to be transparent. They have to be accessible. They have to have that trait of equity and inclusiveness. All these organizations have to be apolitical and no group thing. And a person say that this has to be done and everybody says, yes, let's go ahead. There has to be a devil advocate to say, this cannot be done. And lastly, I would suggest, which I keep on repeating, state has to be ruthlessly ethical. While enforcing laws, while implementing laws, while making laws, whatever they are doing, they have to be ethical. They cannot do injustice. If they do injustice, will move down and enjoy indicators. And it's always good to see something and say something. And we must always remember a famous quote, that every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. So you need to give space to people also if they want to repent and if they want to give up. So you also need to give that space. Most of the extremist fighters from Chile and all those people who went back to Belgium, France, and all those areas, they were mainstream so that they don't do that again. Many people objected that these people were criminals, but they say, yes, they were criminals, but we need to mainstream so that things don't go back. And we all have to remember we have one life to live and we all will face death. But very few of us will taste life, like Rumi says. And that is very important. And the malice of wicked should not be allowed to be reinforced by the weakness of the virtue. We should also ensure that. And like again, Majid was referring to implementation, and Dr. Bushra was also solving a case is one thing, and proving it in the court of law is totally a different thing. It's so difficult to prove. Lastly, I would just re-emphasize that state has to be ruthlessly ethical in all its ways.
I think a very clear and loud message from Dr. Kalim Imam. And we have heard all the speakers with different perspectives. Now I would request Honorable Deputy Chairman Zahir Shah to speak. You have already picked the point, but you have your own perspective on the issue. Please, over to you.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm thankful for the SDPI, Executive Director, team from SDPI, provide us with this opportunity to have a useful session to understand what is corruption, how it can be prevented, and what is the role of the society. What is the cost to the society and what is benefit to the society as a whole by preventing corruption. Was primarily established for the purpose of recovery of the polluted money pertaining to the state, to the financial institutions at the time when the foreign exchange reserve were only $800 million. It starts its working in a way, as Dr. Kalim Sahab has said, deterrence was there, autonomy was there was no intervention by anybody in the working of the National Accountability Bureau. To some extent, the political will was there, which is the basic ingredient for anti-corruption activities. I will quote the words of the Malaysian ex-Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad when he was chief guest of one of the sessions of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption in Vienna. It was in January 2019 when he said that, look, ladies and gentlemen, you are doing a job which is not acceptable to anybody in your country. Everybody hates you. They don't like to be questioned about what they are doing, what they are earning, and what they are collecting. But still, you are required to perform your functions independently, purely on the basis of merit, keeping in view the best public and national interest. I must realize this one factor to all of you, since I know that those who are sitting in front of us, they are engaged in research activities. They are coordinating with the institutions, the public and the private and the civil society. That there is a question of public versus private interest.
if you're entering for the public interest, nothing will go wrong. But whenever you are asking for the private interest, the corruption in. So the society as a whole is responsible for this poor performance on the CPI index. Why the question is being raised that besides the presence of such institution in the country at the federal, at provincial level, in various shapes, why this poor performance has been occurred during the last year. The position was somewhat moving towards a better position in the previous years, but in the last year, it once again gone down. This is a question for the academia, for the researchers. As Dr. Bushra was saying, that there are certain levels where this issue needs to be discussed, needs to be understood. I would really appreciate the speakers who have delivered their speech, particularly the legal side, Mr. Majid Bashir, who has pointed out some weaknesses in the prosecution, because any anti-corruption body is not only dealing with the investigation of white-collar crime, but it is responsible for the prosecution of those cases. The situation which we are facing in our country is that there is complete lack of political will in the country. We have 4 countries in our region who have been successful in this area. The first one was the small, but it was the highly corrupt region. That was Hong Kong. It is now part of China. Singapore, a small country, but highly corrupt in the past. South Korea, highly corrupt country. Malaysia. These are the 4 countries who have been greatly successful in eliminating corruption. And the basic ingredient for improving their position was the awareness and prevention side, not the enforcement side. In the National Accountability Ordinance, the law under which we are working, that starts with the awareness, moving towards prevention, and then the enforcement, which is the last step to be put in. Because enforcement dealt the public with an iron hand. When the East India Company was entering into the subcontinent, before their entrance, they had done a lot of research in this area, and they concluded that this region is highly consumption-oriented. So an area which was at that time highly consumption-oriented, which was not so rich even at that time, how this consumption of lot of things, lot of materials is to be made by the public. The only source of this consumption is the money which is illicit in nature. And even the founder of this country, Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, in his first speech to the Constituent Assembly, realizes this factor, that it is the only factor which may be a hurdle in the development of this nation. So it is with us right from the beginning, before the creation of Pakistan and after the creation of Pakistan. Some criticism from the various segment of the society that NAB, with lot of powers, lot of discretions, with strong investigations, law, prosecution, with the judiciary, why the situation is not being improved. I'm serving in this organization for the last 19 years. I have seen a lot of ups and downs in this organization. The first requirement for any anti-corruption body is autonomy. And autonomy on two grounds: administrative autonomy and financial autonomy. You might remember one fact that way back in 2008, the NAB budget was completely stopped. There was no allocation even for the salaries of the employees. And it was publicly announced that NAB is going to be abolished. Subsequently, with the efforts of those who have their interest in Pakistan, they started to improve the position. The position was improved, but the ownership was missing. Ownership by the political leadership, that was missing. And all the time, there were criticism with regard to the law, that is the National Accountability Ordinance, that has been promulgated by a dictator. Let me clarify it that this law has no extraordinary power which are available to any other civil society, civilized country where these laws are being implemented and the corrupt elements are being handled. Is the best mode of fighting against corruption. A person who is addict of any drugs, he can be stopped temporarily from the drugs. You can start treatment in the best institution or medical center. But whenever he will interact with the addict, again he will start taking drugs. This is a clear example of enforcement. But if you start to stop the production of drugs, if you stop the supply side to reach to the public, it is the way which can permanently stop the addiction or the use of drugs in society. Telling about what is police is being blamed for a highly corrupt department. I have different observation about it. My first question is for those who are involved in the research on this side. That first there is a requirement to evaluate the principles under which the CPI, the Transparency International, is evaluating countries. They are evaluating countries on the basis of public perceptions. They might take a sample from a rural setup, from an urban setup, from the federal capital, from the provincial capital, which are not the true reflections of evaluating anything in the society. Over for the last few years, corruption at the high level was declined, but corruption at the bottom level, at the lower level, started increasing. The reason was that previously NAB decided to stop cases which are below 100 million involving corruption by the public officials or in the private sector. What this amendment are saying that NAB cannot proceed in cases where the amount involved is less than 500 million. So now again, the burden will shift to FIA and anti-corruption establishment at the provincial level. Because all such cases where the amount involved is less than 500 billion, NAB will not be taking any cognizance on such matters. I will also inform you about the international best practices. NAB is a central authority under the Convention of the UN, is also interacting with the international community on different ways and means. We are responsible to provide legal assistance to the foreign jurisdiction, and we are seeking assistance from the foreign jurisdictions. We have generated a lot of mutual legal assistance requests to the foreign countries, and we have received a large number of requests from the foreign countries. Because this is binding under the convention, which was signed in 2003, ratified by the government of Pakistan in 2007. Under this convention, there is a system of review that how the state parties are implementing the convention. Started in the year 2010. At the moment, we are in the second review cycle where Pakistan is being evaluated by independent experts about the implementation of the conditions and the rules which were prescribed by the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. As Dr. Vaqar was saying, that we requested them that they should be part of the review as per the requirement of the reviewer and of the UNODC, that the civil society should also be involved in this process, so that they should receive independent views with regard to the anti-corruption activities in the country. NAB is actively interacting, coordinating with the civil society organizations, with the society, through the educational institutions, through the organizations, state organizations, which have a large number of individuals who are working there, so that a message to be spread for the awareness of the public as a whole and of the government official in particular, that the responsibility of anti-corruption or combating corruption is not alone rest with the National Accountability Bureau or with the FIA or with the anti-corruption establishments. It is the responsibility of each and every citizen, every member of the society, to work for elimination of corruption, because it has a lot of dangers for the society. What has happened in various parts of the world, in African countries, in Asian countries, when Malaysia and Korea, when they were successful to eliminate or to reduce the level of corruption, they became the Asian tiger. They become the industrialist countries. Why Pakistan cannot be? Pakistan has a lot of natural resources, a lot of human resources. As Dr. Bushra was saying, that it has negative impact in all fields. Migrants, brain drain, wastage of resources, low level of social spending, which we are all the time seeing, and the developing state of the country. The growth, economic growth, which we are observing today, as compared to the growth during the 50s and 60s, when we were not so civilized, we were lacking of resources, we were lacking of expert level, but now we have abundance of these resources. Why we are lacking in these areas? Everyone needs to question from himself, from his family members, that what they are doing. I will quote here just one example. this is very important, that what we are calling corruption, bribery, misuse of authority, nepotism, dishonesty. I can explain it in just one example, that a son after graduation telling his father that I may be allowed to go in the civil service. His father was a retired civil servant. His father said, no, my son, you are not capable to become a civil servant. Your habits, your thoughts are against the norms of civil service. So you cannot be. The son was insisting upon, and finally the father agreed that, okay, I will give you one chance. If you have been successful, you can become a civil servant. Otherwise, you will not agitate again. He promised. He went for the competitive examination. He appeared in the exam. He was a talented boy. He was selected and was posted as tax person. He joined the tax service, and after doing his needful training, he was assigned a particular area for collection of the tax. He was a newly married young boy, and he started to prove before his father that I am capable to become a civil servant. With honesty, with integrity, with his abilities, he started his business. One fine morning, his wife, newlywed, came to him and said that since we have constructed a new house and we need to have some beautiful furniture for the new house, said, okay, we can go to a showroom to buy a reasonable furniture for the house. They went there, they started looking for the furniture, and there was one set of furniture which was highly attractive, beautiful set. The wife said that I like it. This is my option. So when they asked about the price of the furniture, it was too much. It was in millions of rupees. So the young officer, the young tax officer, said to his wife that no, we cannot afford it. By that time, the owner of the showroom was informed by his representative that he is a tax person, has been posted in this area, and he is in our showroom. So please, you should entertain him. He immediately came to the person and asked him that, no problem, this is the beautiful furniture in my showroom, so you can have it. And you should accept what your wife is telling you. He said, no, I have no money for this. I just wanted to have my furniture under my control and the money which I have available at the moment. He said, don't worry about the money. You will have this furniture at a very reasonable price. The price, whichever you want. So the wife compelled the husband that if he is saying that he can discount it for as per our desire, as per our capacity, why you are not taking it? So she said to the showroom owner that, okay, this is to be loaded in the truck and to be delivered at my residence. When the taxman was thinking about, the whole furniture was in the truck and it was moved towards his residence. Think about the invoice, the price, and the payment. The person said, the showroom owner said, that we have a lot of showroom in all of the cities. This is the new showroom which we have established right now, and you are the first client. And we have a tradition that we are not charging a single penny from you and the first client. So this furniture is free of cost. Thank you very much. He said, no, I will not accept it. This is misuse of authority. this might be considered as bribery. He said, no, sir. These are our tradition, and please don't overrule our traditions. So finally, he was compelled by his wife that no problem, if they are delivering it, why you are compelling them to compromise on their tradition? Their tradition should be accepted. And the tradition was accepted, and he went home. After a few days, the same gentleman received a demand notice from the tax authorities. And a huge sum was demanded from him as a tax payment. He went to the concerned officer, and when he was entering into the office, he introduced himself as a friend of the taxman. And you should tell him that I am so-and-so, and I'm from the furniture showroom. So he was called by the person. You might have some work with me. So he reached there and he asked the taxman that I have received this demand notice, which is quite unreasonable. It's too much and I'm unable to pay it. Please advise your staff that it should be reduced and call your person who has generated this demand. Person was called in his office and he was asked that please look into it. If it is genuine, then it is okay. If it is highly exaggerated figure, it should be corrected. And ask him that, okay, you should work with this person. He left the office, went with the person who had determined this amount, and they were in negotiation, and he was realizing that your tax officer is my best friend. I know him for the last so many years. I am well aware of his factory. His house is at so-and-so. This is the address. His wife's name is this one. And she is my relative. So please, he has already instructed you to reduce the amount. So they said, okay, sir, let me ask from my boss. He said, don't ask from him. He will abuse you. So whatever he said, he has already told you. So please. So we had no question about it. So you called us in your office and you asked us that this should be reasonably declined, to be reasonably looked into. So we have done it, and as he was satisfied with the amount determined by us, so he went out. In the evening, he went to his father, and he was informing him about what has happened today and what was happened at that day. His father says, that is why I was telling you that you are not capable to become a civil servant. How this corruption bribery starts. Every officer who is contesting for the best of the best job in the civil service at the start is very honest. Very honest. But when the question of public versus private interest is arise, then the issue is starting compelling the person that how they are to be moved and how they are to be worked on. So the United Nations Convention Against Corruption provide us with the provision that we should involve the whole society in combating corruption through the awareness and prevention. And this is the topic for the second review, which is in progress. We have submitted our report to the UNODC that has been examined by the independent observer. And now we are finalizing the said report. And once it is finalized, it will be presented to the government of Pakistan. And after approval of the cabinet, it will be published. And you will have a copy of that on the website of the UNODC, where you can read it and you can understand that what are the obligations and what we have done and what we are needed to be done. At the end, few observations were raised by Mr. Majid Bashir. The requirement of experts, the law provides us with this option, this power that we can engage all such experts from particular area, from particular department, like the State Bank of Pakistan, the SECP, or any other organization where the expertise are available to engage them with particular technical case of their particular nature to conduct investigation and to find the reference. And at the end, they are always the prosecution witnesses while deposing before the court of law that how this work has been done. So this facility is available to us, but still some weaknesses are there. And definitely what proposals you have given, we will have to consider it at the appropriate level. The second point was the hiring of the prosecutors. Yes, of course. Prosecution is the most important arm of any investigating agency. In the world, in the societies, there are two types of prosecution which exist to prosecute corruption cases. The prosecution responsibility rests with the Attorney General of that country, who appoint the prosecutors for contesting the cases of bribery and corruption. And the second set of system is that the prosecutor is from the same organization with the equal power of the Attorney General, and they are responsible, beside investigation, to prosecute their own cases. And they have the legal mandate to prosecute the cases at the trial level and then at the appellate forum. We have this situation, and most of the countries are now moving towards that decision that the prosecution and the investigation should be the same organization. Yes, the amount of payment to a prosecutor is negligible. At the moment, we are paying about 150,000 to a prosecutor who is prosecuting cases of billions of rupees. On the other side, what the Defense Counsel is getting, billions. For all of you, that the minimum charge for a NAB case by the senior lawyer is 30 million at the moment. 30 million. So we cannot compare as a state institution to pay our prosecutor this much amount. But still, for the consumption of this forum, I must say that the conviction ratio in Pakistan in white-collar crime is much more higher as compared to the countries in this region, even in the developed countries. It is around 60+%. But still, it is required to be much more higher. The reason is that all such cases are based on documentary evidence. Documents are available in each and every case. So the ratio should be much more higher. And the cases are to be prepared in a way that there should be no chance for anybody to escape from the scene. Again, I will say that dealing with the corruption issues, it is not only the investigating agency. It is the society as a whole, and it is the judicial system in the country. When we are filing our reference in the court, for most of the time, at the initial stage, we have never been asked the question which are pertaining to the National Accountability Ordinance, or which are pertaining to the FIA Act, or which are pertaining to the PCA, the Prevention of Corruption Act of 1947. Rather, the whole system is moving around the CRPC. That how the prosecution is to start. For 2 years, the court is unable to frame the charge, and without framing the charge, trial cannot initiate. Until that time, the whole process is moving around CRPC and the BBC. So this is the work to be done by the legal side, by the legal fraternity. The government, in the most recent amendments, these trial proceedings have been elaborated under the law. And I'm hoping that particularly this side will be getting improved. Previously, the law suggests that the trial should be concluded within a period of 30 days. In the NAB history, only 2 cases have been decided in 30 days. Only 2 cases. And unfortunately, one case was decided when I was leading a particular regional office. It was decided in 23 days. And the date on which this decision was made by the trial court, next week, the judge was posted out from the court. This is the system which needs to be improved. This is the system which needs to be flourished. Because as Majid Bashir Sahab has said that delay and dispensation of justice, pendency of the cases for years and years, this should not have been done in criminal cases. Yes, in civil cases, there are certain requirements, there are certain issues with the judicial system, with the proceedings of the court, and with the parties involved in the case. But in criminal cases, this should not be done. Because a person who is behind the bar, he should have immediately been provided with the justice. And this can only be done if the society as a whole is working together. Prosecution, the investigation first, then the prosecution, and then the judicial system, and then the defense. If all these 4 parties are working together, then I think there is no other way to decide and to provide easy justice to every person and to make justice with the country. The only survival for Pakistan is let's get together to start what Dr. Najma has said, that हमें अपना दिया खुद जलाना है. It should not depend on any particular individual or agency. The maximum number of the workforce in NAB is around 200,000, which includes the clerical staff, which include the legal persons, which includes the drivers, which include all of the manpower. Out of 2,000, only 500 investigators are working in Pakistan. And out of 500, 50% are not dealing with the investigations. They are responsible for the allied responsibilities or the allied duties. So 250 investigators cannot investigate the whole corruption in this country. Yes, they are sufficient to investigate the cases if there is a coordinated cooperation from the society. If they are doing their job, if they are performing their function in accordance with law, they should be facilitated. Any particular white-collar crime case is successful if the society as a whole and the person who are involved with that case, that is the prosecution witnesses, are honest, they have their integrity, and they have their wish for their country. They will be successful, we will be successful, everyone will be successful. And I'm thankful to the SDPI for organizing such a beautiful seminar and the participation of the learned speakers. I'm really appreciating, and I think this is the start of this new era that NAB will remain successful. And whatever question you have in your mind today, after 1 year, after 2 years, I think there will be no question, and every question you will ask from yourself. So thank you very much, Pakistan Pilot.
Thank you, Zahir Shah Sahab, for an elaborated account of what NAB is doing and what are the difficulties in the process. Yes, these are the procedural deficiency. That's why we are lacking. That's true. But your last message is very clear that it cannot be resolved unless society is part of it. So that with this message, we will conclude here. And I will open the floor for very quick questions, targeted questions, and focusing on awareness and prevention, because time is being.
Society is socially and morally integrated, prevention and awareness is not going to help eradicate corruption. Financial autonomy and administrative autonomy is not going to help unless a society is, is not disciplined socially and morally. My basic comment is that we are focusing on major corruption, but not petty corruption. It starts at grassroots level. So a comment that NAB needs to improve its communication strategy. For example, if I am a university student and I get invited to attend a lecture on corruption, I will not attend that lecture. The basic problem is that NAB is not communicating with the youth. We have a youth pulse in our country. We're not communicating properly through social media channels. You know, it is helping in building and setting up narrative. When Islamabad police improved their campaign management system on social media, people started ranking Islamabad police, Rawalpindi police, and even the overall Punjab police that they have improved their system because they are communicating with the locals. That's just one point that I wanted to add. If NAB can improve the communication strategy, maybe it can help in preventing corruption at society.
I think certainly, yeah. What Dr. Najib was saying, we have a division at the headquarter level and we have wing at the regional offices level. They are involved and they are organizing throughout the year various seminars, various functions, particularly in the educational institutions. At the moment, we have more than 50,000 character building societies, and all of them are based in educational institutions, starting from the universities till the college level. So we are interacting with the students because they are the future generation, and we can easily communicate our message to these people. But yes, of course, it is the interest which the society is taken into part. I have personally observed that whenever such like seminars are being organized by the NAB in coordination with the other institutions, with the other departments or the educational institutions, I have personally observed that the female students are not taking any interest in such discussion. And my question is that there is a global survey with regard to the compelling circumstances for the corrupt people. And that global survey has proved that men are involved in corruption 80% on the insistence of the female. As far as the corruption at the petty level is concerned, you can raise a question from your parents. If your parent is working in an office and he's getting, let's say, 80,000 salary, and he is paying you 5,000 every day as a pocket money, there is an obligation upon you that you should raise this question, that if your salary is 80,000, how come you can pay me 5,000? We have examples of such parents. And the sons, the daughters, they have never raised this question. If the society as a whole is aware of this fact, and if the family members, they are responsible citizens of the country, if they have in their mind that they should play their important role, they should question their parents, they should question their relatives. बेटा एक वक्त होता था जब किसी माशरे में, किसी के पड़ोस में कोई करप्ट आदमी होता था, छुपता नहीं है वो, कोई करप्ट आदमी होता था तो लोग अपने बच्चों से कहते थे कि इसके घर पे मत जाओ, ये करप्ट लोग हैं, ये गंदे लोग हैं, ये रिश्वतखोर हैं. अब क्या है? We are feeling proud of our relation with such people, क्योंकि हम ये कहते हैं कि वो मुश्किल वक्त में काम आए, उसके पास बहुत रिसोर्सेस हैं और हम बड़ा फख्र महसूस करते हैं उनके साथ अपने रिश्ता मुंसलिक करने का, बेटी का, बेटे का. Why? We have the attitude problem, and this attitude needs to be changed, and it can work right from your home, from yourself, from your family, and then in your neighboring, the people who are living around you, and those who you are knowing them. You should raise this question. Whenever this question will be raising from different people, particularly from the youths, the system can change, and it can change in days, not in years, in months, but it can change in days. Thank you.
पहले तो मैं पोस्टर की रिजल्ट करता हूँ कि आपने जो कमेंट किया कि the root of corruption is from women or something like that. To resent that, I think हम यहाँ है और सिस्टम को किस तरह सपोर्ट करना चाहिए. I'll make 2 points. जो आपने क्राइम की बात की, ठीक है ना? Crime all over the world, there are similar psychological attractions to crime. लेकिन crime जो रुकता है वो systems, rules, regulations से crime रुकता है. और अगर एक management है of a anti-corruption organization, उसकी responsibility है to put in place systems, rules, regulations जो उस crime को रोके. You cannot put the blame on the psychology of the crime criminals. ये psychology है इसलिए हो रहा है. You are in the management. You have to have the rules, regulation systems to stop that. ये चीज. दूसरी चीज आपने जो points कहा कि about prosecutors and lawyers on the other side, ये पूरी दुनिया में ऐसा ही है. लेकिन जो लोग जाते हैं, जो US का example है, developed country, जो लोग lawyers वो private lawyers, private law firms में aspire करते हैं, वो एक different breed of लोग होते हैं. वो they want to make money through the law profession. जो लोग prosecutors के professions के लिए जाते हैं, वो एक उनके different vision होता है और वो different motivations होते हैं. तो यहाँ भी यही होना चाहिए और हो सकता है. Just these 2 points are आप.
पहली बात तो ये है कि मैंने जो बात की थी, बिल्कुल आपकी बात दुरुस्त है कि हम यहाँ किसी को डिस्क्रिमिनेट नहीं कर रहे हैं. I was just talking about the survey report, जो कि एक सैंपल होता है और आपको पता है सैंपल जो है वो 10, 20, 40, 50 बंदों के बेस पे भी हो सकता है, 100 के बेस पे भी हो सकता है, which cannot be a true reflective of the whole society. तो बिल्कुल आपकी बात से मैं एग्री करता हूँ. This was just based on the survey report which reflected it. और अगर हम अपनी सोसाइटी में देखें तो मैंने कई लोगों को इंटरोगेट किया, क्यों आप करप्शन कर रहे हैं? जी बच्चों के लिए, जी फैमिली के लिए, जी फैमिली की कंडीशन बहुत पैथेटिक थी इसलिए ये करप्शन की है. और मैं आपको कई ऐसी एग्जांपल दे सकता हूं कि जहां पे कुछ हमारे एक्यूज ने सुसाइड किया इन द जेल, इन द लॉकअप, बिकॉज ऑफ द रीजन कि उनकी फैमिली जो है उसने कोऑपरेट नहीं किया उसके साथ. I can go to one example, one of the senior bureaucrats who was behind the bar, and he was ready to enter into a plea bargain settlement with the NAB. And he called his family, his wife, his son, his daughter. They were next day there, and he asked them that whatever is available, you should sold each and everything, and you should pay this much amount which had been determined by the NAB. And I just want you to come out of this condition. So his wife said, in the presence of our team, that don't worry, all these jails and these lockups are for men. So you should be brave. We will come to you each month and you should be stable. So don't worry. In case of return of all this wealth, next morning we will be on the path. And he suicided the same day. So this is just an example, but I will not insist on this, that this should not be the case for each and every person. As far as the law firm and the prosecutor is concerned, yes. In the civilized and the developed countries, there are two different set of lawyers. One is reserved particularly for the prosecution, and the other one is a law firm, which are providing legal services to the needy persons. But this is not the case in Pakistan. Today, my prosecutor is working as a prosecution person. Tomorrow, he will be in the defense. He will be in a law firm. Yesterday, he was in a law firm, and today he is my prosecutor. So he is seeing both sides. We have no specific person for the prosecution, and we have no person which is totally dedicated only for as a person of the law firm and to provide services to the private entities. So the system is totally changed, and that is why all the time we are engaging the lawyer on contractual basis. And the amount which we are paying to them, it is from the exchequer. And exchequer has its own conditionality that a person cannot be given beyond this limit. There are certain limits established by the government authorities, by the finance, so we cannot cross that limit. So these are the limitations for which we are facing such issues. Because if, let me quote some of the senior lawyers, if on the one side there is Jogri Etizaz Ehsan Sahab,
we have, let's say, Dr. Babar Avansa. We have certain more lawyers of the national repute who are appearing before the judges. And in some point in time, those judges were part of their chamber. So what will be the psychological impact on the judicial system? Definitely we can realize it and we will face it. But still, it should not be an excuse for all of the activities. We should do away with all these compulsion, with all these issues, and we should concentrate that how the issue can be resolved, how the corruption can be eliminated from the society, and this can be done with the coordinated efforts of each and every member of the society, whether it belongs to business community, whether it belongs to any other segment of the society. Everyone should realize the responsibility, and we can write it off from the.
I'll just add, if you see, you have a very pertinent point over here. When we are going to see some menace, we are going to see a holistic part of it. For example, crime in society is not taking place because of police. It's taking place because there are socio-economic factors over there. Yes, if the response system is good, it is definitely going to reduce it. The diseases are not spreading because of doctors. If the doctors take proper response once a patient comes, it's going to make an improvement. So I am for it, especially even when I talk about extremism and when I talk about terrorism. I always say we have to use non-kinetic means. We have to see why a man is being radicalized. What are those ingredients? And we need to start working from day one. For example, whenever you see the people who become extremists, what are the reasons? The ideological reasons, the political reasons, the need reasons, the deprivation reasons. The health system is not working, the education system is not working, the development is not taking place. You see, when we were integrating FATA, even then the concept was that it's yes, you need to merge, you need to have a uniform law, but at the same time, you need to take number of measures. So when we talk about corruption, the first thing is you have to start telling people not only corruption, but about the traffic accidents. Almost 30,000 people die in Pakistan because of traffic accidents. That's more than murder, suicide, or any other crime. The average crime in Pakistan is around, say, the police registers around 8 to 9 lakhs FIR. If they don't do bulking, it might go up to 2 million. Non-cognitive measures are so important. The education, the health, the development, the role of awareness, all that, so that at least you are trying to build a good base. The second is very valid. This is what I'm trying to contest. Leadership has to play a very important role. They have to be capable, the right man for the right job. They need to know the best practices. They need to know they're answerable. They just cannot say that we are going to register a case. They just get away with it. Even you can see the law enforcement, blue or white crime, cases are registered and nothing happens. I always believe that even intellectual dishonesty should be a crime. People who make policies and then somebody undergoes that trouble of that grief and sadness and agony, people have committed suicide because of these things. So state need to understand that, well, people are watching us. We might get away with what we are doing because we are in power right now. But there's an international community, there are people out there, civil society, and there are a lot of people who are watching us. And if we don't behave in a moral way, if we don't differentiate between right and wrong, this is going to continue. The state has to respond. And like I keep on saying, they can, if someone comes and kills, for example, kill a police officer, the police officer can't go and kill that man. They have to go and arrest him, go through the due process, put him in the court, let people know that this has happened. Yes, if you go on a spot and something happens and there's an encounter, that can be acceptable to an extent. But you cannot bring someone and do extrajudicial means and then you say, well, it was right. Like in many places in the West, the cop killers are accepted. Let's kill someone, you kill a cop. But if you do it, what has happened after that? When you go and arrest someone, the hardened criminals, they are going to fire at you first because they know they are not going to be arrested. They are going to be killed. But if he knows that whatever I have done, he is going to arrest me, he is going to put me through a due process, and I might hire a lawyer or whatever and get away. It might not be so brutal and violent. So state has to be, like I say, ruthlessly ethical. It cannot do this extrajudicial measures, extrajudicial things that it takes place. If it does it, this is the result you are going to expect. People are going to lose trust. And trust is the essence of good governance.
He should have time both short and last question. Very short.
मेरा प्रैक्टिस वाले के और बस मैं ये पूछना चाह रहा हूँ कि पार्टी का कानून है ये कितना
हमारे सब्जेक्ट से रेलेवेंट
नहीं सर ये बड़ा ये सोसाइटी ये परसेप्शन है कि करप्ट जो है 1 लाख रुपया खाए 80,000 70,000 रुपया नैप को दे और 30,000 लेके फिर जॉब पे मुझे क्या मसला मैं करूँगा ये एक अगर इस पे चलो ये बड़ा चीज है मेरा काम इसके लिए प्रिवेंशन भी सही से
थोड़ा सा कर दें क्लैरिटी आ जाए।
जस्ट एक
और क्वेश्चन
किसी ऐसे शख्स से मिल लीजिएगा जिसने प्री बार्गेन की हो और उसकी हालत पूछ लीजिएगा कि उस पे और उसकी फैमिली पे क्या गुजर रही है तो आपको क्लियर हो जाएगा।
दीदी आप दीदी
lot of the YouTube videos that falls under NAB's jurisdiction for it to be recovered is not in Pakistan. So first, usually the assistance that you mentioned, how effective has NAB been in utilizing the mechanism to recover the money? And second, how do you deal with how does NAB all the states deal with other states that are not covered? It's one like dealing with where MLA requests are pending where more than a decade. Because if NAB has a strong mechanism in place to recover that money, that will prevent corruption from getting strong.
Any person
पूरी दुनिया में राइट इन्फॉर्मेशन को एंटी करप्शन टूल माना जाता है। हमारे मुल्क में फॉर्चुनेटली 5 राइट इन्फॉर्मेशन के हैं और उनमें से 3 बहुत अच्छे लॉस हैं और 2 मैं ये मेरा सवाल ये है कि नैब किस हद तक राइट इन्फॉर्मेशन को इम्प्लीमेंट क्योंकि नैब भी एक कौमी इदारा है वो काउंटर है सिटीजन को मैं ऐसे कुछ केसेस जानता हूँ कि लास्ट ईयर मतलब 1 साल से ज्यादा कुछ एप्लीकेशंस होगी आपने मिस्टर गुलाम सत्तर शाह साहब को पब्लिक इंफॉर्मेशन ऑफिसर भी डेजिग्नेट किया हुआ है अंडर द सेक्शन 9 ऑफ राइट ऑफ असेसमेंट लेकिन वो इम्प्लीमेंट क्यों नहीं होता मतलब अगर आप खुद ही अकाउंटेबिलिटी या ट्रांसपेरेंसी के उस प्रोसेस में नहीं आते तो आप कैसे मतलब मेरी ये अंडरस्टैंडिंग है तो आप कैसे उस चीज को इंश्योर कर सकते हैं इस सवाल को खासकर जवाब नहीं देते
2 चीजें जी एक तो ये बच्ची ने क्वेश्चन किया है पहली बात तो ये है कि जब भी कोई आउटसाइड द कंट्री कोई भी लीगल एस्पेक्ट जो है उसकी रिक्वेस्ट जाती है we have 2 mechanisms. One is the international obligation under the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. वो ये कहता है कि every state party should cooperate with each other in all such cases. ठीक है जी? Keeping in view their local laws. ठीक है? उसने independently आपको full power नहीं दी है, क्योंकि हर मुल्क के अपने internal laws होते हैं, और वो laws ये कहते हैं कि उन laws को पूरा करके ही किसी की मदद की जा सकती है। सेकेंड थिंग इस रिक्वायरमेंट को पूरी करने के लिए आपका म्यूचुअल एग्रीमेंट होना जरूरी है। पाकिस्तान के इस वक्त 29 कंट्रीज के साथ उनके साथ हमारी एक्सट्रेडिशन ट्रीटीज हैं, बाकी 196 में से किसी के साथ नहीं है। वो हमारे एक एक्यूज को कैसे एक्सट्राडिट कर सकते हैं, किस लॉ के तहत और किस एग्रीमेंट के तहत करेंगे। यूएई के साथ भी हमारा ये इशू चलता है, ठीक है जी। यूके के साथ भी हमारा नहीं है एग्रीमेंट। हमारा अगर एग्रीमेंट है तो यूएस के साथ है। यूएस से हम 5-6 बंदों को उठा के लाए हैं, बड़े सीनियर लेवल के थे जिनको हम वहां से एक्सट्रैक्ट करके लेके आए हैं। मलेशिया से हम लेकर आए हैं, ठीक है। यूएई से भी हम लेकर आए हैं, लेकिन वो म्यूचुअल अंडरस्टैंडिंग के साथ, या उस बंदे को लेकर आए हैं जिसने यूएई में भी कोई क्राइम कमिट किया है, तो वहां पे वो बड़ी आसानी से हमारे हवाले कर देते हैं। अदरवाइज लीगल बैटल जो है उसके बाद ही ये एक्सट्रेडिशन हो सकती है, उनको लाया जा सकता है और उनकी इंफॉर्मेशन भी आ सकती है। उनकी जो वेल्थ है, जो एसेट्स हैं, वो बड़ा एक लेंथी प्रोसेस है कि जिसमें पहले तो आपको अपने मुल्क में ये साबित करना होगा कि इस शख्स ने करप्शन का पैसा लॉन्ड्रेड किया है, और फिर उस मुल्क में उस पर केस चलेगा
कि जब उसका वहां प्रूव हो जाएगा और वो जस्टिफिकेशन नहीं दे सकेगा तो तब जाके उसकी एक्सट्रेडिशन होगी और उसका वो जो वेल्थ होगी जो वहां पे उसने एसेट दिए हैं वो सारे रिपेट्रिएट होंगे। वो किस शेप में होंगे, किस हद तक होंगे, उसमें से लीगल फी भी जाएगी, उनकी जो कॉस्ट ऑफ लिटिगेशन है वो भी माइनस हो जाएगी और फिर जो रकम आपको मिलेगी सो वो अपनी जगह पे एक इशू है। राइट ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन एक्ट के तहत नैब इज कंप्लीटली ऑनरिंग the request, the instruction from the Information Commission. Whatever we have received, we have responded it. But the question is that there are certain classified information which cannot be provided. और ऐसे भी हुआ है कि चेयरमैन नैब के खिलाफ कमिश्नर ने फैसला दिया है जिसकी अपील आपको पता है कि वो फिर प्रेसिडेंट के पास जाती है और हमने की है कि हमने ये इंफॉर्मेशन इसलिए नहीं दी एंड आवर अपील हैव बीन एक्सेप्टेड बाय द प्रेसिडेंट। सो नैब इज फुली कोऑपरेटिंग। आपने जो क्वेश्चन किया कि जी बहुत सारी ऐसी चीजें आती हैं, नैब इज रिसीविंग अराउंड 2000 कंप्लेंट्स ऑन एवरेज पर डे। अब थोड़ी सी डिक्लाइन हो गई है लेकिन दिस वाज द एवरेज फॉर द लास्ट 5-6 years. Everyone who is supposed to lodge any complaint, any application, he is responded, might be after 1 month, keeping in view the number of complaints, might be after 2 months. We have a set mechanism, automatic system, that when we receive a complaint, whatever address is available, if it is received through email, we are responding the response of and the disposal of that complaint through email. If it is by post, we are responding it by post. So whatever mechanism through which we receive such complaint, they are responded that your complaint has been received, it has been discussed, and the disposal is that it has been decided for no further action because the complaint does not fall under the ambit of the law. So if it does not, then no action was suggested. Another option is that your complaint has been considered and it has been referred to the police, to FIA, to anti-corruption, or to any other agency in the country for disposal. And the person is appropriately informed for the disposal of each and every complaint. बहुत सारे ऐसे होते हैं जिनके एड्रेसेस इनकम्प्लीट होते हैं. So we have no such mechanism that without a particular address, a specific address, the letter should be delivered. हम फिर भी भेजते हैं, बाज़ औक़ात अक्सर जो है वो वापस आ जाते हैं जिसका ठीक नहीं होता, और बाज़ औक़ात जो है वो कहीं ना कहीं पोस्ट के जरिए से जो है वो उनका डिस्पोजल वहीं पे ही हो जाता है. So we are responding to each and every complainant, each and every applicant who are received. And commission की बात है, हमने कभी ऐसा नहीं किया. Throughout the history, जब से ये commission बना है, we are responding, we are receiving the information related letter from the persons through the commission, and we have received certain letters from the individuals under that act, and we have equally responded them on the basis of material. If it is allowed under the law, it is not classified, we are sharing it. If it is classified, then we are simply saying that you cannot be provided this information because it is a classified information. नैब की बहुत सारी चीजें ऐसी होती हैं जो कि लीगल इश्यूज होती हैं, पेंडिंग इश्यूज होती हैं. आपको पता है पूरी दुनिया में ये जिस तरह हम यहाँ पे डिस्कस करते हैं, मीडिया पे आके रोजाना जो है वो डिस्कशन होती है, अंडर प्रोसेस केस के बारे में कोई लफ्ज भी नहीं कह सकता. Yes. लेकिन यहाँ सब कुछ चलता है. कोर्ट के अंदर मैटर सब जुडिस हैं and everyone is saying about that matter. ठीक है जी. तो
this is unfortunate.
असल में तो बड़ा लंबा देगा और पैनलिस्ट से चले आप कुछ ले.
आमिर कलीम नाम है मेरा, जनरल इन पार्लियामेंट. Earlier I served as a judge in Islamabad Judicial Service. इमाम साहब भी बैठे थे हमारे. आपकी कॉम्पिटेंसी और इंटेग्रिटी के बारे में पूरा शहर गवाही देता है. पुलिस की जो प्रोसिक्यूशन है सर, दैट इज ऑल टुगेदर डिफरेंट, और नैब की जो है दैट इज ऑल टुगेदर डिफरेंट. यहाँ पे जो चांसेस ऑफ एक्विटल हैं पुलिस में वो वेरी हाई. ऑन द अदर हैंड जो नैब की चांसेस ऑफ कन्विक्शन है वो वेरी हाई. जिस तरह आपने को बताया कि 60% ऑफ द केसेस जो हैं वो कन्विक्शन होती है उसमें. जब पुलिस में करप्शन के हंड्रेड्स ऑफ केसेस एक तरफ और नैब का एक केस एक तरफ, तो क्या सारी 40% अगर हम ये कहें ना तो इसमें 40% एक्विटल जो आपने ग्राफ एक बताया एक्विटल केसेस होते हैं, तो उससे कितना एक्सचेकर को अवाम में उसका क्या बड़े फार रीचिंग इम्पैक्ट्स होते हैं, वो बड़ी हैवी डोज किस्म की इम्पैक्ट। तो आप बीइंग डिप्टी चेयरमैन ऑफ नैब, बताने आपको ये उदा दिया है, यू आर सिटिंग एज अ इन अ गेम चेंजर जोन, आई वुड से। पूरे पाकिस्तान में आप बड़े अच्छे लेवल पे बड़ा कुछ कर सकते हैं। तो ये जो 40% है सर, ये पुलिस की मेरे ख्याल 99% के बराबर है, शायद इससे भी ऊपर आप ले जाए। तो इसको सर आप लोग को करने के लिए डिपार्टमेंट, किसी को पिन पॉइंट करना तो बड़ा आसान है कि फलाना ये नहीं करता, ये डिपार्टमेंट ये नहीं करता, फाइनेंस ये नहीं करता, लेकिन जो आपके करने के काम है, ये जो 40% आपकी गुजारी, तो इसके लिए आप लोग क्या ऐसी स्ट्रेटेजी कर रहे हैं? मैंने देखा है, देखने में आया कि बहुत से ऐसे केसेस जो एक्विटल के होते हैं, एक्विट हो भी जाता है, इवन देन नैब जस्ट एज अ फॉर्मेलिटी उसमें अपील में जा रही होती है। बहुत से केसेस जिसमें होते हैं कन्विक्शन के, लेकिन नैब उस तरीके से फॉलो अप नहीं देता जिस तरीके से देना चाहिए। तो इसमें सर नैब जो है, नैब बजाय इसके कि ये डिपार्टमेंट ऐसा नहीं करता, वो डिपार्टमेंट 40% वेरी हाई। रीजन बीइंग कि ये सारी डॉक्यूमेंटेड इसके अंदर एविडेंस होती है। डॉक्यूमेंटेड एविडेंस को ना तो नैब खुद
सर मुख्तसर टाइम का बड़ा मैं अंडरस्टैंड कर गया हूँ।
इसमें आप क्या सर, आप
माजिद बशीर साहब ने एक पॉइंट रेज किया था कि व्हाट आर द टेक्निकलिटीज व्हिच आर बीइंग फेस्ड बाय द प्रोसिक्यूशन। At the same time, he pointed it out that what are the technicalities being faced by the judiciary. देखें, एक जज साहब जो बैठे हुए हैं, वो डिस्ट्रिक्ट एंड सेशन जज हैं। Normally they are facing with murder cases, with theft cases, with all such type cases, जो पुलिस इन्वेस्टिगेट करती है और उनके सामने एक लेके आ जाती है, चालान लेके आ जाती है, और उसके अंदर वो तमाम जाए वारदात और आला कत्ल और ये सारी चीजें होती है जो उनके सामने। One fine morning that judge is posted as accountability court judge, उन्हीं में से वो बाहर से नहीं आता, without getting any training in that particular white collar crime area। अब मुझे आप बताएं कि क्या एक्सपेक्ट। मेरे पर्सनल एक्सपीरियंस ये है कि whenever there is a change of a judge of the accountability court, the acquittal ratios going up, start बिल्कुल ठीक। पहले 6 महीने तक तो उनको समझ ही नहीं आती, और फिर वो जिस स्टेज पे केस होता है उसके अपना एक डिसीजन है, अपनी पावर है, जिसको वो जिस तरीके से ऑब्जर्व करते हैं उस हिसाब से वो अपना डिसीजन लेते हैं। अपील ऐसा नहीं है हमारा। जब कोई एक्विटल या कन्विक्शन होती है, हम दोनों सूरतों में अपील में जाते हैं। अगर कन्विक्शन हमारे रिक्वायर्ड उसके लो है, यानी एक शख्स को 10 साल सजा होनी चाहिए थी, उसको 1.5 साल की सजा हो गई, हम फिर भी जाते हैं। एक शख्स को 50 करोड़ रुपए जुर्माना होना चाहिए था, उसको 10 करोड़ हो गया, हम फिर भी अपील में जाते हैं ड्यू डिलिब्रेशन के साथ। बट द फाइलिंग ऑफ अपील ऑन द प्रोसिक्यूशन साइड is also dependent on the judgment given by the judge. ट्रायल कोर्ट के जज साहब ने दिया है, तो हाई कोर्ट में हम किन ग्राउंड्स के ऊपर जाएंगे? फिर उसके बाद और बहुत सारे वाइल्ड कॉलर क्राइम के अंदर जो हमारे जो इश्यूज जिसको हमने देखा है वो यही है कि बाज़ औक़ात हमारे जो विटनेसेस होते हैं वो रिजाइल कर जाते हैं। न सिर्फ रिजाइल करते हैं बल्कि वो बहुत सारे अपने ये जो डिले जस्टिस है इसके अंदर फिर वो कहते हैं कि मुझे कुछ याद ही नहीं है। पर्टिकुलरली हमारे जो विसल ब्लोअर है या वो प्रोटेक्शन ऑफ विटनेस है, ये एक बहुत बड़ा इशू है। अब मुझे ये बताएं कि एक ऐसा शख्स जिसके खिलाफ कोई शख्स गवाही देने के लिए ना आए। डॉक्टर साहब ने एक बात की, एक पुलिस अफसर को दिन दहाड़े एक नौजवान को कत्ल कर दिया जाता है एंड नो वन इज रेडी टू गिव द विटनेस स्टेटमेंट। क्या होगा? एंड नैब इज डीलिंग विद not normal citizen of this country. NAB is dealing with the persons who are ruling the system, who have their say in making legislation, in making policies, in making all out efforts for this cause. So even then, मैंने आपसे पहले भी कहा था कि 60% is not sufficient. It should be more than 90%. 10% हम टेक्निकलिटीज के ग्राउंड पे दे देते हैं. And this is the reason. And the second thing is the number of cases. जिस इन्वेस्टिगेटिंग एजेंसी के पास जितने भी लिमिटेड नंबर ऑफ केसेस होंगे वो इतनी ही बेहतर प्रोसिक्यूशन करती है, इतनी ही बेहतर इन्वेस्टिगेशन करती है। और फिर आपको पता है, मैं ये कभी भी ये क्लेम नहीं करूंगा कि हमारे जो इन्वेस्टिगेटर है दे आर अप टू द मार्क। हमारी सोसाइटी के अंदर आपके सामने भी बात कि पुलिस में, FIA में, किसी भी और महकमे में आप जिस ऑफिस में काम करते हैं बहुत अच्छे लोग भी हैं, बहुत टैलेंटेड लोग भी हैं, लेकिन एवरेज भी हैं, जो सुबह आते हैं, अखबार पढ़ते हैं और बस एक दो फाइलें आगे पीछे करके उसके बाद उठ के चले जाते हैं। तो वी आर आल्सो बिलोंगिंग टू दिस सोसाइटी, नॉट फ्रॉम आउटसाइड द सोसाइटी। हाँ, हमारा एक जो सिस्टम है इट इज वर्किंग, well working. We are monitoring the investigations, we are monitoring the prosecution. What the maximum available with us to terminate the person from service? और क्या हो सकता है? कोई prosecutor है, उसने compromise कर लिया, उसके agreement में लिखा हुआ है कि he should be terminated from the service with 1 month salary in advance. इसके अलावा कुछ नहीं किया जा सकता. So it is the joint effort of the legal side, of the judicial side, and of the prosecution side, of the investigation side. ये जब तीनों एक सर्कल में चलेंगे तो I think the result will be much more better. और second thing कि हमारे कई लोग जो है ना वो कहते हैं कि हमारे साथ प्ली बार्गेन कर ले। वो इस तरह कहते हैं जिस तरह ये एक वो जिस तरह मुकमुका वाला सिस्टम है ना, प्ली बार्गेन कर लें, मैं आपको इतने पैसे दे रहा हूं, आप ले लें, नहीं तो मैं इतने पैसे दे के मैं छूट जाऊंगा। एंड इट हैज बीन डन।
थैंक यू भाई साहब, वेरी
टू क्लैरिफिकेशन, 2 क्वेश्चन यहाँ पे उठाए गए थे। एक तो प्ली बार्गेन का, चेयरमैन साहब ने भी बड़ी अच्छी उसकी एक्सप्लेनेशन दी है। मैं थोड़ा सा बता दूं कि प्ली बार्गेन इज नॉट इन फेवर ऑफ द अक्यूज, बाय द वे इट विल गो अगेंस्ट द अक्यूज। व्हाई? बिकॉज उसको बहुत सी चीजें डिस्क्लोज करना पड़ती है, मसलन उसको ट्रुथ सारा बताना पड़ता है और उससे बहुत से बेनिफिशरीज जो पॉइंट आउट हो जाते हैं उससे और पैसा निकल आता है। इंस्टेड वो एक ही बंदा बैठा सारे क्राइम को फेस कर रहा है, उसके जितने बेनिफिशरीज हैं वो नहीं वो बताता। तो ये प्ली बार्गेन की बेसिक रिक्वायरमेंट है, ट्रांसपेरेंसी, ट्रुथ आप बताएंगे, सारा कुछ बताएंगे। तो वो जो पॉइंट कह रहे थे कि प्ली करने के बाद वो चला जाता है, नए लॉज जो है उसमें एक तो बंदा जो है प्ली बार्गेन के बाद 10 साल नौकरी नहीं करेगा। आई थिंक चेयरमैन साहब मैं ठीक है, 10 साल नौकरी नहीं करेगा। और ये बड़ा स्ट्रिक्ट एक्शन है बाय द वे, किसी की लाइवलीहुड को आप स्टॉप नहीं कर सकते। लेकिन नैब के लॉ में प्ली बार्गेन करने के बाद, पैसा रिकवर करने के बाद, उसके बेनिफिशरीज को पकड़ने के बाद, द होल ट्रुथ निकलने के बाद, जिससे नैब बहुत सारा फायदा उठा लेता है, वो बंदा नौकरी भी नहीं कर सकता और जो बता रहे हैं चेयरमैन साहब को उसकी जिंदगी हो जाती है। वो सेकेंड क्वेश्चन है इन राइट ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन, ये बड़ा मिस यूज हो रहा है। बाय द वे इसको फिर पढ़ा जाए, और ये चेयरमैन साहब की बात बिल्कुल ठीक है, ये नैब के इदारे से तो आप इंफॉर्मेशन ले ही नहीं सकते एक्सेप्ट उनकी वेबसाइट, बिकॉज वो तो इन्वेस्टिगेट कर रहे हैं। वो कैसे डिस्क्लोज कर दें कि इसके बेनिफिशरीज कौन है और को अक्यूज कौन है? ये सब्जेक्ट टू लॉ है, इसको जरा पढ़ लीजिएगा। सब्जेक्ट टू लॉ एंड रीजनेबल रिस्ट्रिक्शंस इम्पोज्ड बाय द प्रिवेलिंग लॉज, यानी जो लॉज की रिस्ट्रिक्शन, जैसे कोई इन्वेस्टिगेटिंग ऑफिसर अपनी इन्वेस्टिगेशन सिर्फ मैजिस्ट्रेट को या जज को देगा, उसको कोई लेके पब्लिश नहीं कर सकता। तो नैब तो है ही इन्वेस्टिगेशन का इदारा, जब इससे आप वो इंफॉर्मेशन मांगते हैं जिसके ऊपर ये केस डेवलप कर रहे हैं, तो ये तो नहीं देंगे, ये दिन पे लॉ रिस्ट्रिक्ट करता है इनको। इनकी वेबसाइट के ऊपर जॉब्स का कोई है, कोई इंटरव्यू हो रहे हैं, कोई और चीज है, वो आप बिल्कुल इनसे पूछें, वो तो गवर्नमेंट ने इंस्ट्रक्शन जारी की हुई है। लेकिन इन्वेस्टिगेशन और जो प्रॉप हो रहा है मैटर, उसके मैकेनिज्म को अगर आप लेना चाहें, आई थिंक वो तो लॉ वैसे बहुत क्लियर है कि वो नहीं मिलेगा। तो नैब जैसे अदारे के लिए राइट ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन का स्कोप बहुत लिमिटेड है।
अभी बहुत टाइम काम है, मेरे चाय पे बात कर लीजिएगा जी डॉक्टर वकार। हाँ डॉक्टर नजम साहब कुछ कंक्लूडिंग।
जिस तरह इन्होंने कहा कि अब जो नया एक्ट है उसमें तो ये इनबिल्ट ही कर दिया गया है कि आप इंक्वायरी जब कंक्लूड करेंगे और उसको अपग्रेड करेंगे इन्वेस्टिगेशन में, तो आपको इंक्वायरी रिपोर्ट जो ऑटोमेटिकली आती है उसको देनी पड़ेगी। ये उसका राइट बन गया है इस एक्ट, नए एक्ट के तहत ये चीज़ भी इस तरीके से कवर हो जाती है। और इस नए एक्ट में ये काफ़ी जो सवाल यहाँ हुए हैं उनके जवाब बहुत लिबरल तरीके से आ चुके हैं।
डॉक्टर कलीम इमाम साहब और फिर लास्ट सर
जो टेक अवे होगा वो एक आपसे चाहिए।
जी डॉक्टर, थैंक यू। देखिए, the entire discussion that we are doing over here, we are trying to introspect and we are trying to fairly comment that what is happening, what is the situation, what is the environment. At the same time, we are suggesting how things can be improved. ठीक है? इस किश्ती में बहुत से लोग ऐसे हैं जो कि छेद कर रहे हैं और पानी अंदर आ रहा है, लेकिन जिस किश्ती में नजफ और जाहिर शाह और जो भी आपके चेयरमैन है, नैब है, ऐसे लोग हैं जो पानी बाहर निकाल रहे हैं या निकालते थे और छेद बंद कर रहे हैं। तो अच्छे लोग भी हैं और बुरे लोग भी हैं, तो इसीलिए निज़ाम बिल्कुल कोलैप्स नहीं करता। लेकिन हमें अपनी इंडिकेटर्स अच्छे करने हैं, हमें अपने काम दुरुस्त करने हैं। और जिस तरह आपने ट्रांसपेरेंसी की बात की, अब तो उन्होंने जवाब दे दिया, जब केस फाइनलाइज हो तो बिल्कुल पता चलना चाहिए। दिस इज व्हाट सिविल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन आर, चाहे 20 साल बाद बताएं, 5 साल बाद बताएं, फौरन बताना चाहिए, आपको बताना होगा कि हुआ क्या, ठीक है ना, सो दैट पीपल शुड नो। और अबुल कलाम आजाद ने तो किताब भी लिख दी थी कि 30 साल बाद ये किताब मेरी छाप देना। ही वाज आल्सो गिविंग सर्टेन इंफॉर्मेशन कि क्या होने वाला है। लेकिन एट द सेम टाइम यू आल्सो नीड टू लुक इनटू द इंटरनेशनल एनवायरनमेंट। As you see, we cannot work in isolation. And you remember there was one politician and $1 billion were recovered from him in London, and nothing happened. The best investigating agency over here let the man loose. And I was part of it, and I said, how could that happen? And it happened. Well, first they announced that after 6 months they are going to do this. Then they did some. After 6 months they say he's acquitted, despite the fact that money was recovered. And we know what is happening. So here they think what happens at the international level also. They may know the Swiss bank. They're ready to take any amount coming from anywhere. They don't care whether it's a corrupt amount or not. There should be some international sanctions also. How can they do this? You know? But it's happening, and maybe it's rightly riddled out of FATF and all these stuff. And thirdly, the offshore companies. They are allowed to make offshore companies. You know, there's a lot of whatever money we damn here, you just come and invest in us. So the national community out there, there is a lot of governance and there's a lot of issues existing at that level also, which allows the system of people over here to actually utilize and take benefits out of them. Asylums. There are people who go and take asylums in other countries. Non-criminals. Okay, we may not have an extradition treaty, like the Deputy Chairman was saying, but there has to be some moral understanding. अगर उनका कोई डाकू हमारे पास आके बैठ जाए, कहते कोई असाइनमेंट treaty हम नहीं देते वापस, या हमारा वहां जाके बैठ जाए हम नहीं देंगे. There has to be certain understanding that a criminal is a criminal, accused is an accused, and they need to come forward for that. जो बात की ना उन्होंने कि you see the certainty in law is the most important thing. In all these aspects जो आपका भी सवाल था, you go for the severity के उसको फांसी चढ़ा दो. अगर प्री बार्गेन में थोड़ी सी अमाउंट भी आ गई और कुछ भी आ गई और उसको आपने सैंक्शन भी कर दिया, you have done good enough. All the Majid will testify, all the international courts outside country, they work on plea bargain, even in blue crime. They say he has murdered, he is going to be punished for 20 years. If he confesses, okay, we will save the money, let's punish him for 7 years. They will do that, even in blue crime. And they allow that to happen, you know. So, you see, you have to ensure certainty in law. लाल बत्ती का इशारा तोड़ा, फौरन चला. अगर आप चाहे कैमरे लगाएं, चाहे बंदे लगाएं, लेकिन आप नहीं कर रहे हैं तो ये चलता रहेगा. लास्टली जो बात हुई थी, जो इधर से बंदों ने की, मैं तो कहूँगा नैब सजेस्ट करे और हम सबको we should come up with a law that I am also an advocate and advocate won't like this. There should be a tariff कि भाई कि ये केस है तो इतने पैसे ले लें आप. ये तो होने ही नहीं चाहिए कि अकाउंटेंट हो बिल्कुल कि 30 million ले रहे हैं या कुछ ले रहे हैं. I even spoke at certain level at some place which people didn't like. You see, you go to a lawyer and there is no tariff. Tariff होना चाहिए ना कोई कि ये केस है तो इतने पैसे, या आप ब्रैकेट बढ़ा दें मिनिमम मैक्सिमम. So I think in time जिस तरह PI के टिकट का एक टैरिफ है, कराची के जाने का क्या किराया है, लोगों को पता होना चाहिए कि नैब के केस का क्या होना चाहिए. तो we have to come up with some of these things. You know. Thank you.
बहुत शुक्रिया. And take away, Shah Sahab. Thank you very much, sir. I'm thankful to all of you, those who have participated, those who have actively delivered their speeches, shared their information and their experiences. And I am sure that such like forum where every person belonging to the civil society, to the government departments, to various fields, whether it is the business or it is the private sector, all of them have participated, and I am thankful to all of you. And I'm sure that this is the beginning, and we are hopeful, we are confident that these efforts will remain successful, and one day will come then when Pakistan will be corruption-free country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, all the panelists and participants. Thank you very much. And you know that this is the first of the series. We will meet again. Thank you very much.